and then we will get going. Just for your information, this is being recorded. Okay. Fantastic. Here we go. And welcome everyone to the Early Career Paths in Museum panel. I'm really excited to see everyone here today. A couple of you are already doing it, so feel free to please introduce yourself in the chat. You're welcome to share where you're coming in from, what your major is, share your LinkedIn as well, whatever floats your boat. Hi, Jessica. I'm also from Texas, so it is good to have you here. I'm Daisy. I'm the employee relations partner for the Northeast. I work alongside Jim and a few others here today, and we're very excited to be hosting this panel. Again, as a note, this is being recorded, and I also would like to note that this is considered a PowerPoint presentation live, which means that all of the links that you're going to see on the slide that I've got going are actually clickable, so you're welcome to take a look at that and go from there. A few housekeeping things first and foremost. I want to let you know about our accessibility statement. Individuals with accessibility needs requiring accommodations may reach out to, if you're an online student, it's the oac@snhu.edu. The number is 866-305-9430. If you're a campus student, you can email cac@snhu.edu or you can call 603-644-3118. If you're SNHU staff or faculty, you can actually click on that link to access your resources. And just so you know, the requests for CART transcriptions or live ASL interpreting requires at least 3 weeks of advance notice. I also encourage everyone to connect with us. So we are part of the SNHU Career Services. We offer a ton of benefits. They are also lifetime benefits. So for you currently as a student, but also for you the platforms as well. And I highly encourage you to check out SNHU Career 360 as well. How this is going to go today is I will wrap up my introduction spiel here. We're going to go ahead and introduce the panelists. They'll come off mute and introduce themselves. Rob Denning is here. He's one of our Associate Deans for Liberal Arts. He's actually going to present the panel portion, and then I will cover the Q&A portion towards the end of the hour. My goal is definitely to get everyone out of here as close to the hour as possible to be respectful of your time. With that, I would ask if James wants to get us started. We will go ahead and kick off and go from there. So James.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again, Daisy and team, for the invitation to be here. Happy to be here and share, a little bit about my background and kind of getting connected to the museum sphere. It's always kind of different paths one can take to get to a museum, but it's great to be here. I've been at the Susan B. Anthony Birthplace Museum in Adams, Massachusetts since the summer of 2023. And despite having a museum master's degree, it took me 5 years to get to an actual museum. So I'm very happy to be here, but I'm happy to kind of speak about and answer questions related to the kind of winding roads that sometimes you need to take to get to a historic site in the US.
I think winding roads are the best roads, so I appreciate that. And again, as a reminder, you can go ahead and click on the actual button to see James's LinkedIn and connect as well, and the same for all the other panelists. Elon, could you go next, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Elon Cookley, and I'm the Director of Interpretation and Education for the Historic Sites Department at the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And I also had a very winding road and almost accidentally ended up in museums and historic sites. But it actually took me getting laid off to get into it, and it was right on time.
I feel like you've got a book title there, Laid Off to Get to Where I Want to Need to Be on Time. I workshop it, but I think you've got something there. Jamie, could you go next, please?
Sure. I am the executive director of Museum Village at Old Smith's Clove. It's in Monroe, New York, near West Point. My early career, I was in film and television and theater for about a decade. I was a project manager and then moved into museums. So I've been a curator and an executive director. So, like everyone else, we kind of find our way here in different ways. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
Tom, do you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. So glad to be here. My name is Tom Armstrong at the Museum of Science here in Boston. I have failed every science class I've ever taken, and look, you can make it here too, folks. And I'm currently plotting my way to stay in museums. It's fun. I'm having a blast. Had no idea I'd be here. Highly recommend it, and that's why we're all here.
Thank you. I did pass biology, which I'm proud of, but everything else was an absolute fail. So I understand. Michaela, do you want to round us out?
Yeah, for sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Michaela Kennard. I'm the internship program manager here at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum in Nashville. I've been with the museum for about a year and 8-ish months since the summer of 2023. I came off a background in college admissions. I didn't know I really wanted to go into a museum, let alone work at one. I'm from Nashville. I had a mom who worked in the country music industry. I knew growing up that I wanted to work in the industry in some way. Truly didn't know how I would get there. Coming off my college admissions background, I kind of found my passion for working with high schoolers and college students in that age group. So when I found this job, it was kind of like the perfect in between of like working within country music and also with the group of students that I love so much. So happy to be here and can't wait to share with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm definitely hearing that winding road theme is
Yeah.
emerging today. So I love that. Perfect. Well, here, I'm going to stop sharing. And Rob, I would love to invite you to come on and say a bit about yourself and get the panel started.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I am Rob Denning. I'm the Associate Dean for Liberal Arts. I oversee the online undergraduate and graduate history programs. I got my BA and my MA from California State University, Sacramento. Got my PhD in history from Ohio State, and I've been at SNHU first as a part-time adjunct for a couple of years, and then full-time faculty, and now as associate dean. So I've been around for a while in a variety of roles. Um, and so thank you all for agreeing to come talk to us here today. And you all mentioned in your introductions kind of briefly how you got into the field, and a lot of it might be happenstance or luck or, just kind of being in the right place at the right time. I'm curious if there's any like particular skills that you think are kind of a baseline that students should have in mind when they are going out into the market. Hopefully the luck and all that can kind of take over, but there needs to be some kind of basic building blocks for a student's experience and qualifications for the field. So I don't know if anybody wants to jump in first, or I can start picking on people. It's up to you.
I guess I can jump in. Um, my main ones were curiosity, communication, and listening skills. I mainly work with historic house museums and have for about almost 10 years. And before that, I was in museums and or more traditional museums. And my curiosity about people, about humanity, about individual stories, and how the lives of individuals in the past connect with the lives of individuals today, no matter, how far apart geographically or across time they are. Um, that's been really helpful as I've been trying to gain context for why things are today the way they are. And with communication, having really strong written and oral skills has been really useful for me. So I started much of my historic sites career off with leading walking tours around the community and tours within historic houses and sites. And so being able to speak persuasively, being able to speak openly and honestly, being able to find when it's appropriate to tell a joke and what jokes are appropriate and when. Being able to look at the body language of the people in front of me and figure out, are they listening? What can I be doing to kind of tweak what I'm saying to keep them engaged and help them feel connected to the story that I'm telling, has been really, really helpful. And you can't really do any of these things without having really strong listening skills. So doing the best to not just be listening for words, but looking at all the ways that the people in front of you or the people that you're communicating with are trying to communicate with something to you, whether they're intending to communicate with you or not. So those are my three primary skills.
Yeah, I mean, I can piggyback on that for a second. I think, one, I would say, we all kind of said that we had different ways of getting into the museum field. I would say don't negate the random skills that you have that you may not think directly engage with museums, right? So, my background in theater, I didn't in film and television, I didn't think would necessarily translate. And then I get in the field and, 2/3 of the curators and exhibit designers that I met were film and television people. I have someone that works with me that came from, a background working in garages on cars, and his metallurgy is very useful to me. And so it's just certain things that you don't necessarily think about that can translate. Along with communicative skills, I would also say, being able to present information visually is really important. So, look at graphics, look at how things flow together. And if, those two things together are probably key skills. And somebody asked a question about internships. I would throw out there that internships are, yes, absolutely. Take part, easiest way to network, and find connections and learn on the job.
Yeah, I would say too, on the side of it, the skills that helped kind of break into the field, I would say that having, similar to what you were saying, Jamie, having some kind of flexibility or openness to learning new things, especially earlier in your career, is very useful. I know, Elon, you said you spent time in historic houses and historic sites, and the smaller the institution, the more the benefit you'll get from having a lot of things that you're pretty good at. You don't necessarily have to be an expert, and no one would expect you to be an expert at one particular thing coming out of undergraduate, but it does help to be like a 7 or 8 out of 10 at 3 or 4 things, so that when you're kind of building a resume or you're speaking with people in the museum field, they're like, oh, this is someone that I could bring onto my team that could do graphic design. They could also maybe lead a tour, and they have experience. They could help clean up my donor database, which is in disarray. So there's different things kind of in that if you are willing or able to be flexible and kind of bounce headspaces, that's a very useful thing in the museum world. It's rare, at least in my experience, that you'll be doing one exact thing kind of for your entire 40, 50-hour work week.
I know I can kind of piggyback on that too. Just like coming from someone who didn't know they wanted to go into a museum, didn't know really anything about museums. I've just always visited them growing up. Definitely having strong communication skills, being able to work with others, just being an overall team player. I didn't know I would be working with like our PR team, our marketing team. I would be working with our archival collections team, just a bunch of different people that you may start to work with. Just being at a museum, we've had a bunch of prior interns. I know Jamie touched on internships. Those are so important. We've had prior interns who they've interned with us. They still want to stay within museums, and they end up working in like our guest relations department. So definitely taking like other opportunities within the field, even though it's not exactly what you may want to do, and just making those connections to build your way up to finally get that overall end goal job that you would like. So yeah, just making connections, being able to communicate, and just being an overall team player and willing to work with anyone and just being open to anything that may be thrown your way.
Don't even look at me. My panelists are wonderful. They've said everything that I could possibly say, so I'm not even going to try.
Well, thanks for that. And I would just like to point out that everything that everybody said here is kind of what we consider to be like just general human skills. These are just general skills that are going to allow you to succeed in almost any workplace. Things like communication, collaboration, teamwork, get there on time, meet deadlines. I mean, these are kind of the basic skills that anybody needs in any job. And so that's one problem, or not really a problem, but it's the thing that a lot of history students get hung up on, is the idea that I have to, focus on just my history specific skills when I'm looking for a job. Like, going and doing research every historian knows how to do that to a better or less extent. The important thing that's going to make you kind of stand out is, are you able to kind of convince the people you're applying to work with that you can be a good employee, that you can be a good teammate, that you can do all of these things? Because very little of anybody's day-to-day job is actually going to an archive to go do research. A lot of it is just kind of the, paperwork and working with the public and manning the front desk because someone's out sick. I mean, you got to be flexible. You've got to be able to kind of do a lot of different roles and all of that. So that's really a lot of the stuff that students should be emphasizing when they're looking for jobs, is that you know how to do kind of those skills, those human skills that are going to be most successful. Because a lot of people can learn how to do, going to an archive, you can learn that stuff kind of on the fly, but you need to be able to demonstrate that you've mastered the human skills. That's the stuff that people are really looking for. With that, that said, do you have any other advice for students looking to gain experience in museums before landing a full-time job? So what prep work should students do in addition to focusing on those human skills that we've just talked about?
I'll jump in now. I don't want everyone to steal all the wonderful answers. Sorry. And slowly work their way up. And I think that's a story for a lot of museum professionals, is they get involved through internships and volunteer opportunities. So I would say, if you are privileged enough to have that time, to have that space to do that, absolutely seek that opportunity out. Otherwise, I'm a firm believer in just shooting your shot, looking for folks through LinkedIn, through organization websites, and finding positions that interest you, and just reach out, cold call, cold email. I've had a couple times students in the Boston area reach out wanting to just do like a virtual coffee chat. And those have been like my most favorite times, because, I've stepped away from the computer, all the work I need to do, have to do, blah, blah, blah. But it's nice to like take a break and get that breath of fresh air, that excitement a student has, that hunger for like experience and knowledge and learning. So just reach out, get to know people. Again, it's all about human skills, the human experience. And at the end of the day, we all are humans. So just do your best to maintain that authenticity.
Yeah, I would say too, on the internship and volunteering side of things, our museum, while being quite small, does have a kind of, relative to our size, robust summer internship program. We have housing for students. You kind of need to offer housing because we're up on a hill in Adams, Massachusetts. Not a lot of rental options, short-term rental options up here. We also have our internships are paid. That's one of the commitments that we've made as part of a Berkshire Columbia County Pay Equity Collective. And so that's something too to think about, kind of as you're entering the museum sphere. If you're able to take on volunteer museum work during the academic school year, that's great to kind of build some experience, meet some people, try out different types of museums. They're all very different. I mean, even within their own kind of categories, like the Museum of Science, I imagine the operations there for you, Tom, are wildly different from my day-to-day here in ice-covered Adams. And so that's something I think that it is very helpful, is when you're looking kind of to gain experience before you're getting your first job, is to try different types of places, try different roles, and just do your best to narrow your path while it's not really costing you anything. You're not, hopefully you're not spending too much of your own resources beyond time.
And then I'll jump in here too. So here at the Hall of Fame, we do have an internship program. It's 12 weeks. It's fully paid. It does run in the spring, the summer, and fall. Of course, the spring and the fall, well, you guys are located everywhere. Never mind. You never know who might be in the Nashville area, but a lot of students do relocate to Nashville for our internships. We're offering about 12 different opportunities this summer. Like I said, they're fully paid. They're $15 per hour for undergraduate and $18 per hour for graduate students. We are fully on site here at the Hall of Fame, so everything is fully hands-on. We do offer a relocation and living stipend. It's an additional $2,500, and you would apply for that after you apply for our program. It's called the Full Forward Stipend, but you can figure out all that information, and there's more additional details about that on our website. But yeah, we have countless stories of interns coming in. They're not really sure what they want to do. And all of our entry level or all of our internships are pretty entry level. We're not expecting much. Of course, we want you to have an interest in what you're doing, and maybe an interest in working in like an arts and cultural space. But they're all pretty entry level. As long as you have like that enthusiasm and you're very interested in what you're doing, we would love to have you. And I'm sure that's the same for a lot of other internship programs at museums. Of course, like we want you to have that knowledge and just that experience, but we know you're a learner. We know you may not know everything. So definitely just take all of those different opportunities that you may have and just try to fit that in if you do have that time in your class schedule and your school schedule. They're always just really beneficial. And even if you can't fit one in, like I know Tom was saying, just like make local connections, go on LinkedIn. If you have any like local libraries, any local museums, just try to make some connections there in your like local area too. That may be helpful as well.
So I would say that when you're looking for internships or looking for a way into a museum, to make sure that you stay open. Um, One of the best things that I did when I was working my way into a museum, I got some advice from a friend, and that was to go around doing informational interviews. So I got my first internship, and actually, no, I was volunteering. I was still volunteering, sorry. So I started volunteering at a museum, and there were all these different positions. And I thought I wanted to be a curator. I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be in the archive. I want to be with the objects. I want to explain the objects to people. It's going to be fun. And so I went around and I did informational interviews, which sometimes were as formal as asking someone to go to lunch with me, and I'd get like an hour with them. And other times I would just run into somebody literally at at the coffee maker and just start asking them questions about the work they were doing. And it was through that I was actually able to narrow down what I was interested in. And I also came up with a list of questions that I tried to ask everyone over time, which was, what do you love about your job? What do you do the most often that you tolerate? And what do you wish you could change about your job? And so I started realizing that a lot of the curators at the Smithsonian, where I was first working or first volunteering, a lot of the curators loved being in the archives with the objects and doing the research, but were really uncomfortable having to have lots of conversations with the public. So whenever they had to do a public talk, they would get real sweaty and they would write really, academic dissertations to present that didn't always work with the public in the same way. And then when I unintentionally ended up doing an informational interview with a museum educator, they loved being in the archive with the objects, but they most loved bringing those objects to small groups or even big groups of people and sharing that with the public. And that reflected what I really love doing. And so, I mean, I spoke to absolutely everybody. And honestly, I got my job at the Smithsonian through the secretary. And I don't mean the secretary of the Smithsonian, but through the secretary of the department, like the woman sitting there taking all the calls. She was the one who told me about the entry level front desk position that then led me to meeting somebody else who was also an assistant, who then helped me get the program assistant position in the education department. So it was actually working with people who had been there for a really long time, but didn't necessarily have the big money, the big degrees, and get to do the big public facing work. It was the people who were there all the time on the grounds. Those were the ones who actually helped me with my career.
Networking is hugely important. You always want to be friendly with everybody in every position because you never know what might come your way, whether it's a job, or in my case, once I was friendly with the archivist at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library and ended up with free passes to get onto Air Force One. So you never know what's going to come out of it. So be friendly with everybody because you want to keep those relationships positive. Now, there's a lot of folks here that are history majors and either in the graduate degree or the undergraduate degree program. And so I'm curious what what are your expectations for formal degrees? I mean, we've talked about kind of the human skills and the incidental skills and kind of the networking skills and all of that. But what are the kind of minimum educational requirements that you all are looking for? What types of jobs require undergrad degrees versus what types of jobs require graduate degrees. What do you all think about that?
I'll jump in real fast. So the Museum of Science, we're quite large. Everything from building operations to administration to research, actual scientists, which I think is just like the coolest thing ever. And so it really depends on where you're going. For our trade positions, a lot of our building operations, HVAC, some like the really technical, like woodworking skills, like we don't necessarily require a formalized degree for. While in other situations, we have some PhD level researchers. And so I would say just familiarize yourself with what you are looking for. Understanding that for an entry level role, we are not expecting the world. And I think if you come across a place that might not be the wisest choice to go work for. And so if it's an entry level role, be familiar with an undergraduate degree. If it's a really heavy research role, maybe it is a graduate level, or you're showing a desire to pursue a higher level degree. But when in doubt, it's typically in our world, an undergraduate level degree.
I mean, I can point out a couple things. One contextual thing that I would point out is, keep in mind we're talking about museums, and that is a huge, wide-ranging reality in the United States, right? My museum is in New York State. 38% of museums are volunteer only. So, that's everything from places trying to run with $20,000 a year to places I've got the Met in my state, right? Which sneezes more money than I try to run with in a year, which would be great. But, I would say while I'm looking for, obviously if you have a graduate degree that I'm going to look at that, that's going to be something that jumps out at me. A lot of the roles that I looked at, they facetiously said they wanted a graduate degree. And so, I went that route. But I think some of that is changing in the field a little bit, from what I'm seeing, especially in different sites. But I would also say that what I'm looking for is a portfolio more than anything else. I'm looking for what you've done, what you can do. If you have an undergraduate degree, even in something that's unrelated, but you want to work in museums and you've got a digital or a physical portfolio of work you did, send that to me. I'm going to click on that, and if you've got the goods, I'm going to hire you. I want to see the work more than I want to see, great, this person got the degree. I don't know about everyone else, but I think most of us have had the experience of someone coming in with really high educational experience and not necessarily meeting out with the work. And people coming in that, on paper maybe doesn't look, exactly like what you were looking for, and yet what they're producing is amazing. So, if you believe it, show us, and you'll probably get it.
I've been doing a lot of hiring lately and helping with hiring panels for the historic house museums at the National Trust. So we have 27 historic sites that are spread fairly unevenly across the United States. And for our more public-facing positions, like interpretation, folks who lead interpretation work. So we have like senior managers of public programs, education, interpretation. A lot of times the site leaders are really focused on having someone with a master's degree, especially for management level positions. And I think that is really useful, but for the most part, if you're trying for a more management level position, you need to have management experience. And I'd rather have someone with a bachelor's degree who's a fantastic storyteller, who was manager at Arby's. I'd rather have that person than someone who has a master's degree in history who has no management experience. So you kind of want to think about where you're trying to go, and being able to organize people, being able to communicate thoughtfully with other people are going to be really, really important skills in some organizations over degrees. When I worked at the Smithsonian, it was practically impossible to get anywhere without, beyond a assistant associate level without at least a master's degree. And I wanted to be a curator initially at the Smithsonian. And when you look around, all the curators have, well, I was at the African American History and Culture. All the curators had PhDs. And the three who did not were all over 65. So there's some generational things, there's some generational shifts. There's also been a upswing in people, even in the lead up to the pandemic, of getting higher education, of getting master's degrees, of getting PhDs. And so there are a lot more people on the market with master's degrees and PhDs. So you have to find other ways to stand out for some institutions. So in some cases, the best way to stand out is still to get that PhD, period. And they're not going to look at you without it. Other institutions, the PhD is nice. The master's is probably really the best you really need to get. You don't necessarily have to get the PhD, but then you have to have the other skills. You have to have the other experiences and backgrounds, like having more management experience, or different kinds of project experience. A lot of folks are also looking for specializations. So with a lot of the historic sites I'm working with now, we're really trying to wade into African American history at a site with a history of slavery. So having someone with a degree specifically in American studies or Africana degree, that's more useful at a site like that. We have other sites that are more specifically trying to better engage with the queer experience at the site. So having people who can show that they've done programs on that, they've created projects, that's a research interest is really important, because you don't want to hire someone who doesn't have the cultural competency to talk about one of the topics that's core to the story of the site.
Okay, I think that was just about everybody. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add to that? Or okay, great. And so, big picture, the degree. Basically, if a job calls for a specific degree, obviously that matters. But if the job listing doesn't call for a specific degree, then you can kind of, there's a balance. It's a balance between your education level, but it's also a balance with just the general experiences you have from other jobs versus those human skills we talked about before. So it's not that a BA is going to lock you out of everything unless the job listing calls specifically for an MA, but there's no reason for you not to apply if there's no specific degree requirement, because it all depends on kind of a holistic view of what do you bring to the table, and that's important. So let's move on a little bit to, let's say people do successfully navigate the process and get that job. What are the biggest challenges for these early career professionals in museums, and how can they navigate them? What are the things that new hires run into that hopefully they could prepare for in advance?
One thing that I could say is that depending on, I mean, like I've said, there's a huge context. Like the bell curve of museums, right, is really big. At least in my experience in museums, and it's not massively different than my experience in film and television. You know, you may start out with the job description that's a generalized, this is what you're going to do. That's not going to be your week. Like, be open to being like, I never thought I was going to be a marketer. Now I'm the key social media person on the team. Um, you know, go with it, flow with it, get real used to, I don't know, Udemy or YouTube or any other thing you can look up how to do stuff, like every tutorial page on every, site, and just try, I would also say that one of the things that museums generally, the best case scenario, and I think a lot of museums are like this, are really collaborative, right? Like we really like to work as a team. We like to pick each other's brains. We like to learn from each other. We like to grow with each other. That means that you've got to be willing to be a little bit vulnerable. So if you don't know something, if you feel uncomfortable with something, be open, ask the question, say, you know what, I don't know. Let me look at it. Let me try, right? Because we're all there and we're all trying different things. And that's kind of the joy of museums. Every day is a new day. Every new exhibit's a new exhibit, right? Everything has its unique problems, and kind of be open to kind of growing with that.
Sorry, and so I think that combined with some of the other answers that we've talked about before is kind of demonstrating that that people that are applying for these jobs really need to be creative, and they need to really be able to demonstrate that they can be creative and that they can be flexible and that they can work with others and all that. So we're kind of arriving back to the human skills we talked about earlier. But I'm just curious, are there any specific, especially in this day and age, are there any specific digital skills that you all are expecting applicants to bring, whether it's regarding, generative AI or, graphic skills? Are there digital skills that you think are useful for students to pursue, even though we don't really focus on that in a history program? These are things that students could kind of pick up along the way.
I'd actually like to tie this into the last question about a challenge. And I think it's because digital skills right now are such a new age concept and competency that have not previously been focused on when we consider hiring. And I think one big challenge that I've noticed lately is tradition. And I think you could get that at any organization, any industry. The hardest thing you'll face is well, we've always done it this way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best way we've done it, but it's about acknowledging, where the person coming from. They are coming with 45 years of experience and 45 years of care. And so acknowledging that it might not be the best way to do something, but taking the second to step back and kind of build the relationship. It's unfortunate where you have to kind of, I guess, like demonstrate like why you should be trusted when you bring forward a new idea. And, a lot of times it comes with maybe bringing a new software, which is what I'm trying to do right now at the museum, is bring a new software because I'm so tired of Excel sheets doing everything. I swear there's some technology somewhere that could do what I'm doing. And so taking the moment to like get to know my stakeholders, understand what they've done, acknowledging the work they've done and how this is an opportunity to, remedy some energy on their part. Like this could take things off their plate. This could then, I don't know, find ways to like help them differently. And so I would just say like acknowledge where people are coming from when facing the challenge of this is how we've always done it. And then come with a solution and demonstrate it as an opportunity. Be innovative. Elon mentioned be curious. So that was just like a word vomit on how this like they tie together. But I would just say that's something that, I think everyone will face and has faced.
I would say more specifically or practically on types of software. I think that having some familiarity with customer relations management software, CRMs, is very important for the donor side of museums, for membership side of museums. There's a lot of them kind of out there. Every museum uses pretty much every museum will use a different one, but they're having some experience with databases in general is very helpful. If you're in the collection side of things, accessioning, deaccessioning, you're moving things in and out of a database. If you're on the development fundraising side of thing, which the smaller the institution, the more you will be doing fundraising. That's an important kind of software skill to learn that you might not just get in the typical history class. And then kind of a simpler one, if you have kind of a creative side to you or communications marketing side to you, and you're not already starting to just play around with Canva, that's something I would highly recommend. It's very simple. You don't have to know how to draw, which is great because I don't know how to do that. But if you can be proficient with that software, you can really kind of level up the institution's ability to kind of improve their aesthetics digitally. Similarly, knowing kind of how to manage like drag and drop website platforms, Squarespace, Wix, some of these, that's another skill that for the smaller museums that is really helpful to have as kind of like the bucket of young people tech skills you can have.
I think I'm going to kind of combine the question too. And this kind of brought up for me both if there's a AI ethics or digital ethics course, take it. And ethics in general, because there's a lot going on in house museums and also with museums in general, especially art museums around um, restituting, cultural patrimony, objects that were removed from the original peoples that created it, either by, force like war or by one country or the state ensuring that people are so oppressed that they semi-willingly give up what they have in order to survive. So which is still forced really. And so there's a lot of objects in our nation's collections that have come that way. And there's also objects that are offensive. There's histories that are offensive. There are labels that are offensive. So being the kind of person who, has maybe taken some coursework that, kind of helps you clarify in your own mind, really, your worldview and back that up with history. So that when you get into the workplace, you can be part of the work of red flagging things. Because yeah, we've done things a certain way for a very long time, and those ways weren't always good. And in recent generations, we're realizing that and trying to correct it. But that work has to continue. And sometimes when you've been in the field for a while, you get real comfortable and you need the next generation coming up to keep you kind of off balance, to like keep you honest. And so I really love when new colleagues come in and they see things that people who've been been at the organization for a while are struggling to be able to see anymore. So I think it's always good to have people, new fresh people coming in. And then also to keep in mind that when you start a new position, it's going to take you at least a year to really settle into your job. So breathe through that first year. Most people are going to feel like, oh my God, I don't know how I got in here. I don't think I deserve this. Oh, this is insane. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And so you just keep moving forward with the recognition that it's going to take you a year. And I mean, my organization, we just got a new CEO. And so we had to remember sometimes we were like, is our CEO, what's our CEO doing? And it's like, our CEO just got here. She's only been there for a year. We got to give her a second. Oh, yeah. And now she's been here for a year. And we're like, oh, now she's doing stuff. Okay, we got it. Okay, it's good now. So this is not just new into the field. This is absolutely everybody needs at least a year of grace before they can like really hit the ground hard.
Okay. Any last thoughts on that? We've been, as you've all have seen in the chat, we've been receiving a whole lot of questions along the way. So I think it's probably good for me to hand this off to my colleagues so they can start plowing through the questions from the crowd. Continue for the next few minutes here to answer questions, but I will hand this over to Daisy and Chums.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to go through this next part of the presentation. So I've got a couple questions that I've got earmarked that I think are really important. So Michaela, I'd like to start with you. Elise has asked, and I'm actually going to kind of summarize her question because I think the essence got asked a lot, but she's asking, if there's how you would get management experience from a volunteer opportunity at a museum. And I think, again, that sentiment was really present. Like, how would you at, an entry-level role or a volunteer role or, whatever the case may be, what does it look like to get management and leadership experience from that seat?
Yeah, so for us, our volunteer and intern programs are very separate. So our demographic for our volunteer program is primarily like 50 and up, like our retirees that have a lot of time to spend at the museum. Our internship program is just like all college students. But I always encourage people, especially interns, just like take advantage of every opportunity. If you're interested, if you're a marketing intern and you're interested in collections, make sure to make that known and let your supervisor know about that. And just ask for those other opportunities. A lot of our interns do set up conversations, quick little coffee chats with people in other departments. How to get managerial experience. I know it's kind of hard as an intern, but I guess so. All of our interns do work directly. So I overall manage the internship program, but all of our interns do work with an internship supervisor, and those are either managers or director level staff members that we do have here at the Hall of Fame. So just getting in, asking them questions, how they manage people on their team, how they manage different projects, how they manage just all the realms of their job. And even just like I said, just asking for more. If there's ever a day that an intern may want to like theoretically, hypothetically manage a program or something that we have going on, or if they want to take the lead on that, we are very welcome and like very receptive to that. So yeah, just like asking for all of those opportunities. I know it can be kind of hard and challenging, especially being an intern. Really navigating those conversations and asking for more. But I would just put it out there that you want more from your experience. You don't want to do like the bare minimum being an intern. And yeah, just like asking for those things and just seeing how your leader does those different managerial aspects for sure.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's one of my favorite phrases, but closed mouths don't get fed. So if you ask, you will get an answer.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Tom, we had a great question. And again, it's another one that kind of got asked in a variety of ways. But could you speak to whether or not there's any flexibility or remote work available with museum work in general?
Yeah, and so I think it does vary. I would highly recommend for remote work to look at larger institutions. We are fortunate enough where we do have some remote opportunities, but they are far and few between. Truthfully, we love our team members to be a mixture of hybrid, and very thankful for the hybrid opportunity, so that you can collaborate in space. Specifically, our museum is going through major renovation and major change right now, for the better. We're so excited to be adapting spaces. And so we really value our team members to be on site. But again, for some more admin or digital components, like, our content writers or integrated marketing positions, those tend to be a little more remote, as well as some like data analyst positions. So I would say there are some out there, but there are not many.
Sure. I mean, it makes sense. It's a pretty hands-on field. So that absolutely makes sense to me. Jamie, earlier on, you had mentioned that you really valued portfolios, and Sarah had asked what would be a good example of some of the things that a museum major could put into a portfolio?
Sure, it depends on obviously what you're applying for. But even if you're applying for assistant curator position or something like that, and let's say you've never worked in a museum before, you can still create either digitally or physically, a curatorial presentation, right? And so that may just be um, some didactics in Canva, that basically give me an idea of how you put information together for audience. A lot of times what I find, whether it's in education or whether it's in curation or interpretation, it's we fall in love a lot of times with the artifact in different ways, and it's really stopping seeing the artifact as this singular item and seeing it as a bridge to a story. And that's what I want to see. I want to see how you take that object and allow that object to be the entry point to what the audience is gonna, emotionally connect with or intellectually connect with. So, it could be just images. It could be, I think I saw someone say, would my thesis work? Yeah, send me your thesis if that's what it is. I will I would remind everyone that when you're talking museums, having been a graduate of Southern New Hampshire University in the history department with public history, I will say that generally public historians need a little help with translating their labels for general public. Remember, this is like 5th or 6th grade, that you're taking very complex ideas and putting it into 3 or 4 sentences and making it very accessible. So that's what I'm looking for. So if you're going to send me your thesis, also send me along with that how you would translate that for general public. So yeah, any of that stuff could be in a portfolio, but things that I can grasp onto and say, okay, this is how you work.
Yeah, so really kind of showing the thought process and also showing that you can talk to a variety of audiences, which makes complete sense. That's awesome. So we have a question as well. There's a student asking about a degree in creative writing and how that would fit into museum work. So I know that Eon, you had mentioned, item descriptions and things like that, and I would love to have you answer. But I would also love, just because James, knowing the focus of your museum, and I imagine you guys have a lot of nonfiction written works because of that focus. Would you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that our museum is starting to do a little bit more is expanding some of our exhibits and the things that we talk about beyond just, items that we have related to Susan B. Anthony and her life and her history. And one of the things, as is part of her experience, promoting abolition, women's suffrage, other causes, was in writing and delivering great speeches. And so we've been adding more kind of reenactment elements. And one of the programs that we're working on right now, it's kind of in the R&D stage, is a reenactment of another kind of Black suffrage leader with the Tuskegee Women's Club in Georgia. Her name's Adela Logan Hunt. And we've been doing some research on her past. And the part where the creative writing aspect would come in is turning someone's history or someone's narrative, or really turning whatever, a timeline of their life into a compelling narrative, whether that's a monologue that gets performed, whether that's a dialogue, maybe a dialogue between Susan and Adela. They did write each other on occasion. And so finding kind of like what Jamie was saying with the kind of theater background, like there is like this creative aspect to making history come alive, especially when you're a smaller site where you want to kind of be a little bit more innovative, and we're having someone with creative writing background or theater background or film background could maybe take some facts that we have in a list about an individual and figure out a way to kind of make that relatable or compelling to an audience today in a way that someone just maybe that wouldn't come to the museum just to learn about Susan, but they would come to this almost theater performance about one of her suffrage compatriots.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And again, Elon, I know you kind of answered it already, but do you have anything that you would add to that?
So I definitely agree with what James was saying. One of my best ever programs that I did in my last job was thanks to having our program assistant, who was supposed to mainly be doing a lot of finance work, but was doing theater on the side for fun, come in and help us create a theater program. And we absolutely could not have done it without them. One of the things I love about people who could do creative nonfiction writing specifically is there's skills there that are focused on imagination. So taking small bits of information, doing some research to fill it out. My specialization is interpreting the history of slavery. And a lot of times when you're looking at the lives of enslaved people, you have a name, usually just the first name, maybe a physical location at a specific date and time. And you may have very little else. You may have something like cook. And so you take those very bare facts and you think about, okay, well, what was the life of a cook like in general? What was the life of a cook like in Central Virginia? What kinds of foods would they be cooking? What kinds of crops would be raised in the area? This person is enslaved. So what does it mean to be an enslaved person versus a free but low income cook versus someone who's of a high stature who also happens to be a cook? So taking all the information and then creating a snapshot, but a compelling snapshot that people are interested in and can relate to. instead of just a stream of facts. So that's one of the problems that I see with how history is often presented to people, whether that's in the classroom or a traditional museum or a house museum, such a traditional house museum, is there a lot of streams of facts and timelines, and people can't always absorb all that information and can't feel connected to it in a way that they actually remember after they leave. But if you can create a human out of a couple of facts, people can believe in that and they can remember that and they can take it home and share it with their friends and family. And they can, I've seen it happen where people can hear a story and feel changed, but you can't feel changed with just a list of documents, a list of facts about someone. So creative writing is an incredibly powerful skill when it comes to helping people connect with a variety of different topics.
I love that. And I think it's a really interesting intersection too of just storytelling being such a human language, and then also the moral obligation as being curators. I know it was about 4 or so years ago that I first heard about, I think, those who chose the sea as a concept, as a part of talking about enslaved peoples, and it's obviously stuck with me. So I think that's an excellent point. We've got a few minutes left, so I just want to round robin really quick. If you could pick your favorite museum and you can't pick your own, what would everyone pick? And I'll start with Michaela.
Okay, that one is a really hard one for me. I am a big science nerd. You would probably never know that. So, Tom, I would love to visit your museum whenever I need to make my way to Boston. I would love to go there. But if you're ever, I know this is a little biased, but if you're ever in Nashville, the Adventure Science Center is amazing. I love it. The Creative Discovery Museum in Chattanooga is really cool. I have been to the Met, love the Met. 10 out of 10 would recommend. That's just a couple of mine to name a few.
Love it, love it. And since you picked on Tom, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna say, just because I got engaged there, I would say the Louvre in Paris. It's a biased answer, but it was magical, and France is amazing. So go visit, y'all.
Yeah, I think
Can
that
I
answer
popcorn
absolutely
someone?
wins.
Because I love.
Awesome. Jamie, do you want to go next?
Sure. I've been spoiled. I grew up in Washington, D.C., so I had the Smithsonian, but I also, my first bout of university was in London, so I had the Victoria Albert, and those were both amazing. But I would say right now, one of the places that, if you're interested in museums, you should go see is the Museum of the American Revolution. Even if you're not interested necessarily in the Revolutionary War, the history of it, the way they're presenting the information and how the space is set up is very cutting edge. It's really interesting and engaging.
That's awesome. I love that. James, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I did my undergrad down at Tulane in New Orleans, and I would say my favorite museum still is the National World War II Museum. I think for some of the reasons that Elon was talking about before, they do a very good job of kind of immersion and explaining and kind of talking about the different ways that cultures clashed and interacted. They had a really good, I don't know if it was made a permanent exhibit, but really good temporary exhibit on the use of racial propaganda from both sides of the conflict, which was really eye-opening to me, having kind of grown up in this, U.S. environment, which vilifies, the Axis powers, and seeing some of the kind of things that our own side was doing to enforce that vilification was really eye-opening. They also do a lot of really cool stuff with sound design. You can hear it's very immersive. Yeah, it's great.
I love that all of you go to museums for the content, but also to watch how it's set up. Makes complete sense, but I love that. Elon, do you want to round us out?
I got to go to the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina recently, and that is definitely one of my top museums right now. I got to go on a tour with the director of education and just grilled the crap out of the guy. I had so many questions because the place is really fascinating, and I love their use of video and like contrasting colors and images and sound and motion and the environment outside of the museum. It's all carefully curated, you know, things they can't even control, like just the view shed, like what you can see. It was just really fascinating how they basically curated and manipulated things. I just thought it was fascinating. And also the Kid Museum in Bethesda, Maryland. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old, but I would go to that museum as a single adult because you learn how to become a maker. And so you get all these different, you know, historical elements and craft elements and cultural elements, and then you get to use your own personal expression through it. So I think there's some really amazing kid museums that adult museums need to go learn from, because whenever I go, the adults are having just as much fun. I have seen people on dates at kid museums and they are having so much fun. So I've been trying to figure out how do I get some of these kid museum elements into some of the sites that I work with, because it's great for everybody.
I love that. There's something to it. I was playing with Play-Doh on the side here while you guys were all talking. So there's something tactile about history, and I will get behind that fully. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. I've kept everyone a little bit past the hour that I promised, but this was an amazing conversation, and I wish we could keep it going, but unfortunately, I know everyone has lunch and lives to get to. So again, to the panelists, I appreciate your time and your insights. To the students who are in attendance, thank you for making the time today. The recording will be shared out within the week, probably even sooner than that. And with that, I will wrap us up. And again, thanks everyone for being here, and enjoy your day.